Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, anyways, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would talk about this little segment, this little subject, because I thought that it was very, very interesting. Anyways, of course, there's been a decent amount of storylines of the NFL lately, but I thought that this was a very interesting one. Now, for those of you overall that watch my channel and have watched some of my football videos, you know that my favorite team to root for is the Carolina Panthers. I tend to really like the Carolina area, so I tend to look or like a lot of teams or a lot of players overall that may come from certain Carolina colleges or somewhere down south around there, maybe the Georgia area or the Carolina area, places down there a little bit near the Bible Belt when it comes down to it. But when it comes down to it all in all, some interesting news popped up, and Cam Newton, of course, who was the former MVP caliber quarterback of the Carolina Panthers, he now apparently has been re-signed to the Carolina Panthers. And now, all in all, because he ended up getting his vaccine, and not only that, but because the Carolina Panthers really don't seem to have a much better option, with Sam Darnold really being pretty much very horrible this season or the past couple of games, what really is there to lose by signing Cam Newton? Do I think necessarily that this is a good signing? Well, I think all in all, the Carolina Panthers, they don't really have much of a choice. They might as well sign Cam Newton, and I think all in all, hope that maybe an old spark can get somewhat reignited when it comes down to it, then rather putting their hopes into Sam Darnold. Not only does Sam Darnold apparently have an injury, but on top of that, Sam Darnold, he's just never going to be someone, in my opinion, that is an elite quarterback. He's just really not an elite decision maker. He does not perform very well under pressure. He's got some sort of talent, but Sam Darnold, in my opinion, his best version is going to be as a backup quarterback. He is not a person, in my opinion, that belongs as a starting quarterback of the National Football League. That's just my personal opinion, but it is what it is. But Cam Newton, of course, he hasn't really been himself for at least a solid 3 years. And the question is now, not only with the injuries lined up and a certain amount of other things, but is Cam Newton the same quarterback that he used to be, or is he going to become the same old quarterback that he used to be? This is my opinion, but I highly doubt it. A certain amount of people may disagree. I do think there's a certain amount of people. It's very interesting. But now that ever since Cam Newton, ever since that he really has been out of the league, it seems like people actually miss him more now. And on top of that, it seems like actually more and more people are sticking up for him, which I find interesting. But this is my personal opinion. Even though I don't think that this is a bad move, I don't really see how Cam Newton is going to bring a great amount of success to the Carolina Panthers. I think that the Carolina Panthers were a decently talented team at the beginning of the year, but they're very inexperienced when it comes down to it. And on top of that, the defense has a whole bunch of injuries. Their top-picked cornerback, J.C. Horn, ended up breaking his foot and basically is out for the rest of the season. There's a multitude of other injuries as well. There was injuries on offense. Christian McCaffrey, of course, had to be out for several games, when it came down to it. So the Carolina Panthers, they're trying the best that they can. And, of course, they're signing Cam Newton maybe in hopes that they can make a small playoff spot, or maybe hoping that Cam Newton can somewhat reignite this team and maybe bring them to even a little bit of greatness. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, Stephen A. Smith and Tim Tebow, they're going to talk about what they believe Cam Newton is going to be able to do with the Carolina Panthers. And is this more box office, meaning that is this more for popularity and to give more attention to the Carolina Panthers? Or is this also to make them a possible contender? We're going to talk about it here in the video. Let's get into it.
Is this signing a box store or box office?
It's about box office. It's an easy one. And I mean, the Tebow can't possibly disagree. It's the box office himself. I mean, there's nothing to talk about here. I mean, listen, when you look at Cam Newton, pay attention to this, okay?
Oh, okay.
Cam Newton didn't have the greatest year last year, even though he completed 65% of his passes in 50 games played for the New England Patriots. We all know COVID was crazy last year, really interrupted and threw a monkey wrench into the 2020 season, NFL season. We got all of that. And then obviously he lost out on the job to Mac Jones this year. Cam Newton has never been an elite passer. He's been an elite athlete. He's been an elite performer. But he has never...
And let me say this with Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith, he really has, burned a lot of bridges overall lately, especially with the pro-black cult mentality, because not only did he go against Colin Kaepernick, but he went against Max Kellerman, who, of course, the wigger white boy, the super duper liberal wigger white boy of ESPN First Take, or formerly of ESPN First Take when it came down to it all in all. He offended Max Kellerman, and he offended, all those guys that basically supported Max Kellerman. So Stephen A. Smith, he's not overall on a good playing field with them right now, but I really don't give a shit. It is what it is. Stephen A. Smith, when it comes down to it, I've never really had a big problem with him. Now, does that mean that I think that he's correct on every single take? No, it doesn't. But when it comes down to it, his take on Cam Newton has always been somewhat accurate. Cam Newton, Lamar Jackson, and Colin Kaepernick, and certain, quarterbacks of that ilk, they're pretty much all the same. I mean, they're not all the same in terms of value when it comes down to it. So far, Lamar Jackson, you can debate that at least somewhat, that he will possibly become the most valuable later on down the line. I would say that Cam Newton, I guess, out of all those guys, has been the most valuable because, of course, he was able to lead a team to a Super Bowl appearance and also win an MVP in the same season. But when it comes down to it, we all know that Cam Newton, he's basically what we would call a running quarterback. Cam Newton can throw to a certain degree. He can throw somewhat of good passes, but Cam Newton was never going to be a consistent passer. So certain people, they always bring up these points and say, oh, well, if you give Cam Newton all these weapons and all sort of stuff, that's great at the end of the day. But when you really take a look at Cam Newton at the end of the day, he's a decent quarterback at his best. I'm not saying that he isn't. But we all know that Cam Newton, in some sort of way, is limited. It just is what it is. It's the same thing with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, he's a great runner with the football, and he's not that bad of a thrower with the football. But if you force him to throw down the field under pressurized situations, he's not going to be as consistent as some of the best of pocket passers. It just is what it is.
Been the most accurate passer in the world. Let's understand that. The reason why that's important is because when you look at this situation with Carolina, if he was, and if they had believed in him, they would have never let him go. Now, in fairness to Cam Newton, in 2018, they were off to a 6-2 start. Norv Turner was the offensive coordinator. Cam Newton looked absolutely phenomenal. He hurt his shoulder in that ninth game, I believe, against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they proceeded to lose 7 straight because he was never the same, and he ultimately sat out for the rest of the season.
You know what? That's true, but let me say this, and that's the same point that Max Kellerman was trying to bring up, many, many times. And I think that Stephen A. Smith, he's bringing that up so he doesn't look like a hater of Cam Newton, because Max Kellerman would bring up that point all the time. But Max Kellerman, he's nowhere near as smart overall as he tries to, bring off, all in all, when it comes down, or that he tries to show off. Because he would make the same dumbass point about Colin Kaepernick and basically say, oh, well, Colin Kaepernick used to be a guy that led a team to a Super Bowl, for Christ's sakes. He should be a starting QB in the NFL. Guess what? There's certain quarterbacks out there that once upon a time led a team to a Super Bowl appearance or led a team to a Super Bowl win. Does that mean that they should be a starting quarterback for a franchise right now? Eli Manning, once upon a time, he was pretty much horrible his last 3 years in the NFL. And Max Kellerman would advocate that, all in all, that he should not be a starting quarterback. Why is that, Max Kellerman? Because once upon a time, Eli Manning won 2 Super Bowls. Why shouldn't he be a starting quarterback? Because times change. And after a while, age gets to you, damage gets to you, and there is no quarterback out there that has more damage to them than a Cam Newton. It just is what it is. A certain amount of people may disagree, but the facts are out there. The writing is on the wall. When you take a look at the most hit quarterback of the past 10 plus years, it's been Cam Newton, and I don't even think there's been a close second. Partially, that is because of his offensive line that was not very good for the majority of his career, but a part of that also was because he treated his body basically like a bulldozer. Because, of course, he's 6'5", weighs about 250 pounds. He can, he's a great athlete. But Cam Newton, like I said, he's a person all in all that, he has about a 10-year window if he's lucky. After that, that is pretty much going to be time's up. And it's pretty much usually the same thing with Lamar Jackson and some of these other elite running QBs that can somewhat throw, but all in all are very, very limited. We've seen quarterbacks like this before. It is what it is. Now, do I hope that Cam Newton has great success with the Panthers? I certainly hope he does. I just don't see it. I think Cam Newton, I think that he's way too damaged at this point in time in his career. And on top of that, he never was the most consistent thrower either. So I don't see how Cam Newton, I don't really see how he leads the Carolina Panthers to anywhere, really, to be quite honest with you. Could he possibly give them more of a chance than Sam Darnold? Yeah, but that's not really saying much. I mean, to be honest with you, shit, Tim Tebow might be able to give more of a chance than Sam Darnold. So, it is what it is.
About a 5-6 game losing streak. His shoulder was jacked up. He got all of that. He hadn't been the same since. When you look at Cam Newton now, considering that essentially, when you really think about it, he's about 2-3 years removed from really being himself. Why would Matt Rule in Carolina bring him there? The dude is beloved. Now, I went to Winston-Salem State just an hour.
I do agree with Stephen A. Smith a little bit that it is partially due because of box office. But do I also think, all in all, that Matt Rule is thinking, well, you know what? If Cam Newton, if he can have a couple of good games, if maybe we can win a few more games because we may not have the toughest schedule later on down the line, at least against other guys, not against our own division rivals. If we can even squeak out possibly, let's say, 9 wins, we may overall whatever the hell that is, we may overall just be able to make a playoff spot. And all in all, we may make this team a little bit better later on down the line and for next year. We may be able to give them a little bit of playoff experience. Maybe we can draft someone next year. Maybe all in all, we can have a better plan later on down the line.
Away from Charlotte, North Carolina.
So I think part of it is box office, but I do think all in all that some of it is box numbers as well. I do think all in all that it's really the best of both worlds. At least it's the best option available.
In Charlotte often. City loves Cam Newton. He's an iconic figure in that town. You know, his philanthropy and everything else that comes with it. The guy's a sensation.
It's basically like, if you broke up with, your ex-girlfriend when it comes down to it, but then eventually you realize, you know what? We really truly do belong together when it comes down to it. I haven't been able to find a better match. And you know what? I do think all in all that we truly do believe that we want what's best for each other. I think that's kind of how it's like. So Matt Rule, yeah, of course he's looking at it and basically saying, yeah, Cam Newton, of course, can attract a certain amount of people here. And not just people from the Carolina Panthers, but people other places as well, because this is going to attract, eyes. But when it comes down to it, I do think that he is hoping that Cam Newton can at least somewhat retain some of his old self, get healthy when it comes down to it, and lead the Carolina Panthers somewhat to success. We'll see what he does, but I'm not too hopeful of them beating the Arizona Cardinals this weekend, even though Cam Newton, he's had plenty of success against the Arizona Cardinals in the past, but of course, this is a completely different team.
Person has done a lot for that area, just means the world to those folks. They love this brother. Right now, they're 4-5. Their quarterback played horribly over the last several weeks of Sam Darnold. Even though they do have some talent, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, and those boys, Christian McCaffrey.
Well, let me not even bring up Robbie Anderson. He's been completely fucking useless this whole entire season. And I know because I've watched several other games when it comes down. I've went to the sports bar. Robbie Anderson has had about 37 drops this season. I don't think that's literal when it comes down to it, of course, but my point being is this. He's had a hell of a lot of drops this season. Robbie Anderson has been almost completely useless for the Carolina Panthers this year. DJ Moore has been very consistent, but I expected that a little bit from him because he is a very decent receiver.
Stud. At the end of the day, when you look at Cam Newton, there is no question. This is about box office appeal because you're going to come see Cam Newton. You're going to talk about the Carolina Panthers because of Cam Newton. They're going to be on your mind constantly because of Cam Newton. Make no mistake about it in that area. He's that big of an attraction. And that has everything to do with why he's there right now.
Well, he somewhat used to be, but don't get me wrong, I still think Cam Newton is an attraction, but he's kind of an attraction right now the same way that Dwayne Wade was in the last part of his career. Or the same way that, someone overall who used to be a very decent player, like, he's kind of the attraction the way like a Derrick Rose is right now. Someone all in all who used to be a very, very good player, MVP caliber player, but no one really expects him to be elite. But yeah, you're going to get some people all in all that, really overall do hope that he does good. So I understand what Stephen A. Smith is saying.
Dang, Stephen A., is it ready for commercial now? Molly, do we still have time at all or no?
He wants to play ball control.
Oh, so good? Hey,
we're good, we're good.
Hold on. Stephen A., we got to back up. Stephen A., we got to back up for a second because, hey, a lot of people might not have caught it, but I caught a little jab you threw in there about the old box office. Hey, maybe it was, but I do remember one box. At least I remember one box score against Pittsburgh. I don't know, but it's just hit my memory. So, hey, let's get to Cam Newton, though, okay, Stephen A.
I still haven't forgiven Ike Taylor for that. Still haven't forgiven him. Go ahead.
Let it go.
Let's get to Cam Newton and what Matt Rule said. And I think there's one thing that he said that is so vital and critical and important.
Okay.
Health.
Let me also say this about Matt Rule, because a certain amount of people, they may blame Matt Rule. I don't think Matt Rule is a bad coach at all. Now, would I say that necessarily he's an elite coach? That remains to be seen. I have to give him more time, but as of right now, when it comes down to it, so far, he's been looking very decent. So, we'll see what happens.
Healthy. Cam Newton is healthy. He's still special. I really believe that. And I believe that he's been training like crazy for an opportunity. And is he box office?
Well, he probably has been, but, Cam Newton, he's at a very similar point in his career, kind of where Colin Kaepernick is. He's probably at a better point, because Colin Kaepernick, he's even worse than Cam Newton, but is right now. But when it comes down to it, all in all, can Cam Newton really bring the type of success that a lot of people want him to bring to the Carolina Panthers? I highly doubt it. I hope I'm wrong, but, we'll see. Like I said, I'm rooting for Cam Newton. But Cam Newton, he's kind of like Derrick Rose at this point in time in his career. He has a lot of baggage on him. He can still bring you some value, but you don't expect him to be MVP caliber at this point in time in his career. You don't expect him to make the All-Star team. You don't expect him to be a Pro Bowler at this point in time in his career. Can he possibly lead them to an outside playoff spot? Can he possibly, lead them to the 7th playoff seed or the 6th playoff seed? Maybe, but that's an outside chance.
Yes. But that doesn't mean that he's not box scorer. I believe with the talent around him and their defense has a 3rd best efficiency, 7th best scoring defense. It's a really good defense. They still have playmakers. Now,
I think that it was a very good defense. Now, if they end up getting more confidence, then maybe the defense could improve. But there's also a lot of injuries and a lot of spots on that defense right now. They're not the same as they were within the first 3 games.
They need to adapt the offense a little bit to him. It's a new scheme. It's a new system. He's going to have to come in and learn. That might take a little bit. But I still think he's so different than everybody else that he still has a chance to be special if he's healthy. I don't think that Matt Rule and the Carolina Panthers said, hey, we're just going to go, sign this guy to fill seats. I think they said, hey, we evaluated him. We believe he's healthy. We did our due diligence. And if he can be even close to what Cam was in the past when he was healthy, he can still be special with their playmakers and with...
Well, that's really the question. Can he be the player that he was in the past? I just don't think so. And I know a certain amount of people, all in all, they say, oh, well, how can you say that? He's completed 60-some% of his passes for the past couple of seasons. Yeah, in his first season with the New England Patriots, his only season with them, he threw more interceptions than he did touchdowns. So what are we really talking about here? It is what it is. Don't get me wrong. I'm really rooting for Cam Newton. I really am. I don't see it happening. If I'm wrong, then I'll eat my crow, and I'll be very glad to. That'll be the best plated crow that I've ever eaten, because I'm really hoping that Cam Newton is successful, because I've always rooted for him. But I just don't see it happening.
Their talent around him. And remember, they're not that far out of it. They're right out of the playoffs right now at 4-5. And you have the few teams in front of them, like New Orleans, that's trying to figure some things out. Obviously, Tampa's playing extremely well, and they're a really good team. But there's still a chance that this team could make a run and possibly make the playoffs.
Well, I'll tell you this.
They could. The NFC, I'm trying to think of the 6 teams I would probably be ahead of them. Tampa Bay is still probably my favorite to make it out of the NFC. Of course, Green Bay, they're going to be a threat. Arizona, of course, the LA Rams. Seattle maybe could make a run because Russell, I think, has finally returned, but wouldn't be surprised if they missed the playoffs. They probably have the same chance to make the playoffs as Carolina, to be honest with you. New Orleans, of course, is there, but Carolina possibly could beat them. We'll see. I'm trying to think. I feel like there's one team that I'm missing here, but I don't remember. Is there one that I'm forgetting? I don't know. I can't remember. But those are pretty much the main teams that they got to worry about. Could Carolina possibly make it? They could. But, yeah. Oh, Dallas. Dallas is another one that I forgot about, even though, of course, they didn't look super duper impressive against, Denver. But I still think that they'll be good later on down the line.
I won't disagree with you there. What I will say specifically is that the next 4 weeks are going to matter. After Arizona, which is this week on the road, you got the Washington football team, the Miami Dolphins, and the Atlanta Falcons.
Unfortunately, the Carolina Panthers, in my opinion, I just think that they blew way too many games. I forgot about Atlanta as well because Atlanta now has a better record than them. So at least I think. Or around the same record. So we'll see. But unfortunately for the Carolina Panthers, I mean, the season still has got a lot of games left, but you got 2 games against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You got 1 game against the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, that's pretty rough. And then, of course, you got 1 against the Seattle Seahawks. Good luck.
If you got anything left, you should be able to.
Because Carolina, if they really did plan to make a run for the playoffs, they should have not blew those games against Philadelphia overall, not got completely demolished against New England when it came down to it, and also blew it against Minnesota. They blew every single one of those games.
Show it over the next 4 weeks.
winnable
And if he doesn't, it's not going to be
All
good.
winnable.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you think they have a chance to make the playoffs?
I give them an outside chance. I just don't like their chances. I'm just looking at the rest of the NFC, considering what's going on in the NFC West with Arizona and LA, in the South with Tampa and New Orleans, in the North.
I'm with you, Stephen A. I feel you. I pretty much, I think you're right on the money. I'm right there with you.
With Green Bay, obviously the NFC East, they got an outside shot, but it's an outside shot.
Yeah.
You know what? I would even say this: if Carolina could make a run with their defense and Cam Newton being healthy with their playmakers around him, if they could make a little push at this thing and get into the playoffs, I don't think they would be a team that a lot of people would want to see with their defense.
I mean, I get your point, Tebow, but at the end of the day, that defense has a lot of injuries that I'm not sure if they're going to recover from. They're extremely inexperienced in the playoffs. Don't get me wrong, I get your point, but I don't think anyone's looking at Carolina right now and shaking in their boots. That's all I'm gonna say. I need to see them, win a couple games. But I get where you're coming from.
With how Cam Newton can control the game physically downhill, Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, man, I just don't think a lot of teams would want to see them in the playoffs either.
That's if Christian McCaffrey overall doesn't have another injury with his fragile ass. God damn.
Be a dangerous team.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube.
Anyways, looks like that's really about it for this topic, but I just thought that would be very interesting because Cam Newton is a dude that I rooted for a very, very long time. Because, of course, partially because, he was a part of the team that I root for, the Carolina Panthers, but I always liked Cam Newton, to be honest. I liked him out of college. I thought that he was a very decent quarterback. Of course, he's a running quarterback, so he's not necessarily the best of pocket passers, but when it comes down to it, he still was very talented. I hope all in all that he can lead the Carolina Panthers at least to a playoff spot. What I'm going to say is this. If they somehow were able to make the 7th or the 6th seed, I wouldn't be shell-shocked. But I'm predicting more than likely they're probably just going to miss it. Probably going to be the 8th or 9th seed, which of course would mean that they just miss it. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, that's pretty much all I got to say for today. We'll see what happens, and I'll talk to you all later.